All right, good morning. Wow, that sucked. All right, good morning. All right. Okay, let's do something fun, right? Because this is day 2. Some of us were at the bar, some of us are at the bar after the bar. So like, do you want to just like get up and just come closer? Because I know the setup doesn't actually allow me to like come down from the stage, but it'd be awesome if we just like come up a little bit more. And I would super appreciate it. Let's take a quick second. It's okay, don't be shy, you know. So customary to all my presentations, my daughter always says, you should go tell a dad joke, right? So I'm going to make an effort, right? And every time I get on a plane, she leaves me with one that she's like, Daddy, you should like check this out. And if it works, we'll go work on another one. So I'm trying to get her to do public speaking as well. So the way this one goes is, what do mermaids and mermen wash their fins with? Anyone? Water's good. Anybody else? Ah, that guy's already heard it, so it's tied. Yeah, I know. It's okay. Take your time.
A for effort.
Exactly. All right, next year you'll have my daughter doing the keynote. All right, my name is Asher Matthew. I'm the CEO of a company called Partnership Leaders. We exist to elevate partnerships all around the world, and all types of partnerships. It doesn't matter what flavor of partnerships you're coming from. We believe that there is a time now where we should elevate partnerships, and we should all come together. And we created this organization from partner people, off partner people, and for partner people. Everything that we've done, and we'll talk a little bit about it later on in the presentation, but everything that we've done was built by partner people. It's funny because like when we started the organization, we asked people, hey, why are you doing these things, right? And anyone want to guess like why people helped us build this whole thing? Take a random guess. Anybody? Like I know it's the morning. This table 4. Well, that part
Asher wishes
is a
that
little
was the reason.
questionable at times. Kelly will tell you, yeah. Well, the reason why they did it because they said they have free time and there wasn't a single organization around to support them. And so we said, we'll build it together. But as customary with Partnership Leaders, we do everything with partners. And so over the last 24 months, Kelly and I have partnered on a lot of different initiatives. But the one initiative that Kelly really drilled into Partnership Leaders was to develop high-quality content. And so, Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself? And let's take it away.
My name is Kelly Sarabin, and I run tech partner enablement and advocacy at HubSpot. As Asher said, one of the things that we focus on is really trying to understand the market for partnerships, and not just tech partner, but the broader ecosystem of affiliate partners, solutions partners, resellers. We really want to understand how this is evolving because, as everyone in this room probably knows very well, it's very quickly evolving, and with AI coming to the table, it's also going to be evolving even more rapidly in the next 2 to 3 years. So one of our goals is to do market research and actually go out to practitioners and do valid surveys to find out how are people perceiving and actually utilizing partners today.
Super. So last year we did a report called the State of Partner Operations and Programs. And that report gave us an insight into how partner people think about their function. And then this year, we did the State of Partner-Led Growth because we wanted to see, well, how do sales and marketing teams work with us, right? And think about partnerships. And this is actually an amazing, like, I would say a 3 or 4-way partnership because Kathleen's over here too, and she represents Pavilion, and she'll tell you a little bit about Pavilion in a couple of sessions. But we were able to partner with them, we were able to partner with HubSpot, and then the result that we'll share with you today. So how many people love this statement? We're not supposed to say that. This is not actually working out the way I thought it would work out.
Asher thought you were going to pan the statement, so
exactly.
Now he's thrown off track.
Exactly, that's my slogan. It's funny. So our belief is that, yes, you should do more with less, but you should do more with less partners. And what we've realized over working with the 1,500 or so members that we have in Partnership Leaders is there's a lot of people trying to do a lot of things with a lot of entities. And we said, well, like, rather than go around this like shiny object syndrome that we sometimes move in partnerships, why don't we just focus on a few partners, but actually do a lot of great things with them and build over time, right? So let's talk about why, right? And what we found in the survey was that companies have realized that partners can impact the entire customer journey. And you can see on the screen, they can help with collaborating on deals, they can help send you new leads, they can help improve brand equity, they can help with reselling, they can help with implementation and managed services, they can help with enrichment and intent data, right?
And just to add on,
yeah.
the survey was conducted from over 200 marketing and sales leaders, so people who are leading teams and all sorts of organizations. This was their response to how they're seeing partners impact their own organizations.
Yeah, and what we realized is that marketing and sales leaders do believe that partners can help you close deals much faster. Now, I also understand that like a lot of the audience is actually coming from the B2C side. And Kelly, do you have a comment on that?
I think a lot of these tactics work for B2B and B2C, and a lot of these broader trends relating to the buyer journey apply to both. A lot of market research shows that business buyers are really only interacting with the sales team in the last 5% of their journey. And some of the trends that I think we'll cover in future slides really apply equally to both of those motions. So I think a lot of the data that we've uncovered and anecdotes that we're seeing in the B2B world can apply to B2C and vice versa.
Vice versa, yep. And I think one of the things that Robert talked about last night was that the realization that even the B2C marketing or the affiliate marketing that we do today, there is an impact of that on the, let's call it, post-sales process or maybe through the funnel, right? When he talked about like outcomes and then coming down to really paying for performance, but paying for the outcome versus just paying for the lead. And those are some of the similar things that we're also finding in the B2B side, where partners are now being pushed and encouraged to really demonstrate their value through the customer journey. And there's a post-sales process where the partner can come and help a company implement the product and find value from it and help with renewals and help with upsells. And I believe the same thing can be done on the B2C side. All right, let's talk about the growing opportunity for partners. And who here would agree that it's getting very noisy out there? Well, Sam definitely is like heads up. Yeah. And it's true, because again, if you think about what's happened, there's tons of layoffs that have happened. People are just trying to understand, hey, how do I make money? How do I support my family? Are there other ways for me to generate income? And then obviously, you know, thank you to Gary Vee and the likes, everybody can become a media company now, which means that everybody will start picking up their phones and create content, which is great, right? But what it's done, it's actually taken the traditional ways that we go to market and made them even more expensive. And Robert talked about that last night too. So what we found in the survey, both from marketing and sales leaders that were in partnerships and marketing and sales leaders that were not in partnerships, both agreed that if you use partners, you can actually find that the partners are actually significantly more effective in delivering outcomes.
And we asked this about various channels, so paid ads, social media, content, and this and sort of the community-led growth were the channels that were seen as growing the most significantly in efficacy for a lot of the reasons I think that Asher's saying, which is that there's been a deluge of content. People, whether you're a consumer or a business, you're being inundated with direct mail, with spam, with cold calls. And with AI on the horizon, the amount of content that is going to be available online and video is just going to go through the roof. So the key is, how do you break through that noise?
Yeah. I'm curious, like the folks that you all work with, how do they think about creating, like cutting through the noise? Like anybody? Because I'm sure your creators or the companies that you all work with are also seeing this explosion in content. So getting to the final buyer and really getting them to take an action may be tough. Ben?
I think it's about finding the right user, right?
Yep.
So as a business, what we do is look at the advertiser, look at who exactly their customer is, and then find that customer in the right publisher. That publisher already has that relationship with that user.
Yep.
So it resonates, like you say, it cuts through that noise. They're paying attention to that person. They value the opinion of that publisher.
Yep.
So it resonates with the user.
And so how many people are now trying to go after the same audience? Like, I'm assuming year over year, that percentage has gone up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, can you repeat that?
So I was just saying that like the same people that, let's say, a merchant will go to ask to a publisher, right? Like there's probably more people trying to go to the same publisher, and then the publisher is saying, well, I guess I can charge more now.
Absolutely. There's publishers pushing their prices up all the time. Then it's
Yep.
our responsibility as a business to also talk to that publisher about value of their audience and not damaging it.
Yep.
I think these days with so much noise for that user, it's not just that publisher talking to them. How many other publishers are talking to that user?
Yep.
So making sure that you drive value to your base.
Yep. Yep. And all we're finding is that the partners, or working with partners, is actually a great way to actually drive that value. Okay. So we also found that partners impact the buyer, but only second to word of mouth. I know a lot of us already know this, but the data actually shows it. And what was interesting was the review sites line. And Kelly and I were talking about this yesterday. In the B2B world, people use industry analysts a lot, but it actually shows that the industry analysts aren't necessarily driving a lot of deals. But I would say in the B2C side, which is your world, review sites probably help drive a lot of referrals. But even those were lower than working with trusted agencies, consultants, and tech vendors, or even other communities.
And I think you want to think of these as the channels, right? Like blogs, articles, and podcasts obviously still work very well to convert, but the reality is when you're talking about this kind of authentic connection, right, it comes from these trusted agencies, associations, consultancies, and it can also be a publisher, right? Like publishers are able to build communities around their content. But if you look at content in mass, most of it is generic and somewhat impersonal. So people may read it when they come across search, which may decline as AI starts providing an answer without links. But for now, they go and then they leave, right? And they don't necessarily come back. It's the publishers that could become essentially more strategic partners because they've formed a community around their content.
Yeah. So to give you a little bit on the B2B side, the traditional thing to do is go hire more salespeople, and then send more emails, and then go hire marketers, and then also send more emails. And a lot of what happens is because of the world that at least we come from, which is high growth startups, there's a lot of pressure to deliver on an outcome which is like triple or double growth. And so what people are normally, or the companies normally do is like and send out a lot more content. And what has happened now is because there's this infusion of content, companies are saying, well, actually, if I really wanted to buy something, I'll just go talk to my friend and then figure out what they're doing, and then that has a much more weight. I'll listen to everybody, but right before I make the buying decision, or right before I'm getting serious into the buying process, I'm just gonna go and talk to my friend. And that friend could be like a consultant, an agency, a tech vendor, like any of the above.
And it can be scaled. I mean, it can be an influencer or micro-influencer, right? I think
Yep.
it's who's forming those human connections, and so that the buyer feels like they have an actual lasting connection, and that goes to deeper partnerships versus more just take any partner that's coming at me, but actually looking very closely and saying, what is my ideal partner profile? Can I build a sustained, lasting relationship so that our brands stay aligned and that we're both communicating a sense of human connection to the person on the other side, even if it's not an actual one-to-one relationship?
All right, here's more data. So as a company grows, partners become more important in the marketing mix. So this is research that was done by Insight Partners, which is a very prominent venture firm. And what they found is that there's a number of tactics. And as you pass revenue bands, that there are some tactics that are producing much better than others and that are widely used. And you can see that partners, referrals, and community actually increase as companies get bigger. And so what we do, at least in B2B land, is start focusing on the companies that we can share this good word about partners with. But this, I just thought this was interesting to share that, like, you know, a lot of companies say that we should go work with partners and stuff early in their journey, which is correct to actually think about it. But when you really want to invest in it and utilize, the results are actually pretty good once you hit 50 million and above. Kelly?
Yeah, I agree. I think this works both ways, right? If you invest in those motions, then you're going to drive more revenue and you're essentially opening up new channels that you don't have. And I think early stage companies, there are some exceptions, but are often making sure that they really hone in on a direct relationship with their user and customer so they understand it. And then you can layer in partners to essentially add velocity in a very efficient way.
Okay, so I guess we built the case for like invest in partnerships, right? But now we should answer the question, well, so why aren't partnerships driving more revenue?
Yeah, I think that this is a really interesting result from the survey, which is that marketing and sales leaders, whether they worked in partnerships or not, are very bullish on this channel. They really do believe that leads and referrals that come from partners convert better than average. But there's really a lot of obstacles to optimizing that, and I think we're going to go into them on some other questions, but I think at a high level, part of it is the lack of knowledge and the rapidly changing nature of partnerships and how it's really expanded out from the traditional motions that don't necessarily work very well anymore, and really being able to put in place the frameworks that enable you to capture the ROI.
Yeah, so this is going to sound familiar, right? Because even Paul yesterday encouraged all of us to think about strategic partnerships, going deeper with a few partners, right? And then when we did the survey, even on the B2B side, we realized there's this thing called the planning tax, which takes a lot of time to actually go build a partnership. And then when you want to execute it, it takes even more time because there's resources required. And that's why in a lot of cases, people just do the simplest thing, which is a webinar, a blog post, they just stay very, very up funnel. But if you look at the data shows that folks that were actually able to overcome the planning tax enjoyed a lower cost of acquisition. They also enjoyed positive brand awareness. They enjoyed better engagement rates. They enjoyed better conversion rates. They enjoyed better quality of leads. They also enjoyed a better lifetime value of those leads. So this planning tax is actually something that inhibits companies to go work deeper with partners. And so I guess I'd be curious to hear for the folks in the audience that have developed deeper brand partnerships, like how did you overcome this planning tax? Or is this a problem? Like, can you all, I guess let's do a show of hands if the planning tax resonates with you all and when you try to build strategic partnerships. Well, I knew Ben would raise his hand. Kathleen's got it. Yeah, totally. Well, Kathleen's representing B2B, right? So anybody on the B2C side, like, as you try to work closely with like a celebrity or anybody like that, does it take a lot of time? Yeah.
So I think, and it sounds like this challenge is not resonating, which is interesting, but I think basically what the idea is when you have a large-scale number of superficial partnerships, right? Every single campaign, you're essentially, the enablement process, it's costly, right? To enable a partner on your brand takes time, it takes energy. And to coordinate any kind of campaigns together takes time. To align your marketing calendars together takes time. And so that is really why the acquisition cost is higher. But I think if you look at on the B2C side, there's great examples of companies like Red Bull and GoPro who formed partnerships that were lasting over many years. And as a result, they were able to make sure they had really high brand alignment, but essentially have their two teams working together in a coordinated, coherent way, right? Because every time you try to work with a new company, there's going to be friction in getting the two teams to work together. There might be workflow differences, cultural differences, and of course technology, right? Which is why we're all here for Everflows, who makes this product and these processes easier. But when you form these deeper relationships, you can essentially put those processes in place and let it run. And then you've paid that upfront cost. You don't have to keep redoing it with every single partner.
Yeah, and I think what we've also learned, at least from our members in our community, is that it's great to be very excited about partnerships, but then they go into their companies and they start working with sales and marketing teams, and those sales and marketing teams have their own priorities. And sometimes those priorities could be like 50 items long, And actually, as you read the report, one of the perspectives we got from a very popular CMO was that they have 50 things to do, and I think 49 was actually working with partners. And so there's a big challenge that we have to overcome, but we all have to come together and like work through it. Okay, so we actually said there's a lack of framework for going deeper, and the number one item was folks need to implement a scalable partner program with repeatable processes, and this goes back to my favorite word, rigor. And I do believe that like if more companies like establish rigor the same way sales and marketing teams do, then the partner teams would actually go much further because they would be in line with focusing on results, focusing on outcomes, rather than just focusing on just like doing a campaign here or there. Kelly?
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest challenges to leveraging partnerships is the lack of framework and strategic structure, which makes people very reactive rather than proactive. And ultimately, while that might seem easiest in the short term, it just doesn't drive the same ROI.
Yep. Okay, so we've talked a bit about like do more with less partners. We built the case for why you should invest in partnerships. We talked a little bit about what's lacking. And then we want to leave you with like, what do best-in-class partner marketing teams do today, right? And there's this whole notion of like going from ad hoc partner marketing to actually programmatic partner marketing. And if you think of the whole thing as a program, it's okay to start with the pilot, and then you make it a project, and then you make it a program. And so what happens is in the pilot phase, things are very ad hoc, right? Most companies have like 7 or 8 different types of partners that they're dealing with. And so what happens is like they don't actually have a formal process of like figuring out who their ideal partner is. And it's because everybody's hunting for revenue. And so understanding like who is your partner, what are you going to get out of them, what are they going to get out of you, just having that formal conversation. I know everybody talks about trust and all these things. All that is cool and great, right? But the brass tacks requires a planning session. It requires a conversation in your C-suite to really hone down on who do we partner with, why, and then how do we support them, and how do they support us? And it's just going to be documented and very clear. All of the best-in-class partner marketing teams all do this. And the reason why they do this is because they do this for their direct marketing efforts too. Nobody goes and focuses on APAC as a region when they know that their entire business could happen from the US region. So that's one, I would say that's probably one firm example. Go ahead, Kelly, do you want to add anything on the ideal partner profile?
Yeah, I think that very few organizations do this really well, and most organizations understand what an ideal customer profile is, and they internally have the tools for building that out, whether it's through the product marketing org or somebody else. But when it comes to the ideal partner profile, it's often very broad, and they sort of just put things out there and see who comes and who wants to come drive traffic for you, which is not can have some business value. But if you take the time to really look, understand your brand alignment, and then also understand the audience, who has the authentic connections, who has the community, and then I think, as was covered yesterday, look at the outcomes. Right? Like you have to constantly iterate on that, and a big part of it is what's working, what's actually driving lasting customers.
Yeah. And the second one is like my favorite because I made tons of mistakes on this one, is when I put the technology and the data in front of the people in process. And so the analysts, or very popular analysts, always say people, process, technology, data. So first, like organize your people. Make sure that they understand what their identities are inside of companies. If you want to call them partner marketing, help them understand why it's partner marketing, right? Or if they're affiliate marketers, of course, like people, at least in B2B companies, people don't call them affiliate marketers, they call them digital marketers. And so, but they need to know why they exist. And then who should they go for help? And then you work on processes for people to understand, well, if you really want to go get a campaign going, who do you go talk to? What are the requirements? And then you use technology like Everflow to automate all of that, and then you go for scale. And so what we found is that the companies that are really moving from pilot to program are like taking these steps intentionally. They'll take 3 months and really understand, hey, are the people that we brought together, do they actually enjoy working with partners or not? If they don't enjoy it, then let's find other people. But if they do enjoy it, can we give them the resources and tools that they would use to actually get their jobs done and their day better? And then I know Ed and I, we were just talking about this right before this session. But to me, workflows are like the biggest unlock, right? It's where habits are formed. And so and just like there's like 17 different types of salespeople, there's probably like 25 different types of marketers and 30 different types of partner people. And so bringing things to them the way they like to do it versus just pushing them into like square lanes I don't think is the way to do it. We need to think about workflows in the way people live their lives and then bring the technology to them so that they actually go and produce great results. And it's okay, and the winning organizations are all doing that. And then, of course, they use tools to automate all of that work and make them more efficient, and then they are able to actually get to really good growth.
And I think Robert talked about this yesterday, but when you think about the team perspective, you want to have that ideal partner profile for all these different partner types, but understand that many partners can fit in different buckets. And you want to align your internal team structure with the partners and with the processes. But you think about affiliate partners, for example, many of them can also become referral partners. They might be tech partners. There's lots of different relationships that you can have. And sometimes when a partner is a multi-partner relationship, it can become a strategic partner, which is then managed in a different way. But really understanding that it's not just one partner type, and how do you, as an organization, make sure that you have transparency and processes across all these different partner types so that you're using those synergies together instead of just having them siloed in different teams, possibly reporting to different C-suites where they're not even talking to each other.
Yeah. Also, the folks that actually do make it to the programmatic side actually make a lot more money, quite frankly. And that's kind of somewhat close to my heart as CEO of Partnership Leaders, is the skill sets that you're using in affiliate marketing, if you just translate them a little bit over to the tech marketing or working with other types of partners, there's a whole world out there. I'll tell you guys a story. I was in Toronto, and we did this meetup for our members. And I think maybe like 95% of the people that came to the meetup were from e-commerce. And because Shopify is a big hub there. And then I went and told them about ERP, and they said, well, what's ERP? And then I said, well, what about marketing automation and all these other things? And there's so many different pockets in the market that like everybody that's in this room, you all have this talent, and if you get to a programmatic way of doing partner marketing, you can actually take the skill set, even for the agencies in the room, right? Like you can take the same skill sets and just move them over to tech companies. There's a big shortage of quality partner marketers. They don't exist the same way that affiliate marketers and stuff exist. And so that was like, as we were building this deck, and Kelly and I were talking about this last night, I'm like, one of the big opportunities for all of us in the room is actually like, how do we take what we have and then go to the 50, 60, 70,000 tech companies that are out there that need this help? Because again, this is an efficient way of growing their businesses now. Because they're not getting cash. Actually, like if you go talk to investors right now, investors are like, we probably need to get these companies off our books as fast as we possibly can. They may not say this in public, and I know we're recording this, I'm probably going to get hate emails about this, but investors are like, let's get these companies off the books. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I think that the other issue when you think about this is the brand misalignment, which really ties into the community angle. So one of the dangers of going wide is you have a bunch of either publications, people, other tech companies representing your brand in a way that is totally off how you want to represent your brand. And in the long term, right, that can cause incredible damage because either consumers or other businesses create associations in their mind with your brand that you're not looking to have. And then when they ultimately come into contact with you, it can be a jarring experience. So I think one of the best things to do when you are sort of upgrading your program is to make sure that you have a very clear message and guardrails around what your brand is and what it stands for, and then make sure that any of your partner types are fully enabled on that messaging.
Yeah. The next one is focus on outcomes. No surprise that if it's a problem with B2C, it is a problem with B2B. And a lot of the partner marketers that are up and coming focus, again, on just webinars and blogs and things like that, right? And then what that generates is a lead, right? And then they go to like the sales teams and they say, hey, I've got this like amazing set of customers and stuff like that. And the sales team picks it up and brings it further. But the salespeople aren't enabled on the messaging or the offer. And so the best-in-class partner marketers, and there's about like 37 or 38 of them that we've identified in PL. We should probably like do a blog on that. But what they do is they focus on the revenue impact. And they say, okay, if I'm going to go do a webinar, then I'm also going to make sure that I have a session with the sales team. I'm going to make sure that product marketing understands how to create the data sheets that the sales teams will follow up with. And I'm sure that it's the same problem in B2C as well. If you have tons and tons and tons of like affiliates that you need to work with who are out there, or even creators, which could be worse. At least it is in B2B. I know one person laughing at this, so I'm sure that they've had this experience. They sometimes go off on their own because they're trying to figure out what the news cycle is and then trying to use that news cycle and newsjack some of that to get their marketing done. But the best-in-class partner marketers are just focused on outcomes. Like they focus on revenue impact. And at least that's what we found. And we'll release more content on like how do they get to that point.
Yeah, and I think a huge hurdle to the visibility to outcomes is the technology component, right? Because large companies are using usually on average like 250 pieces of software, and even smaller companies are usually using 40 to 45. So even if you within your domain are tracking the outcomes of your partner, if it's not integrated, if the data isn't integrated across your whole organization, then when the C-suite comes to look and say, hey, what's working? What are the outcomes of these different relationships? Then it's not necessarily going to be compelling if they're either not seeing it or there's internal disagreements on who's right. And so really making sure that you have the ops in place and the technology where things are not only being tracked for any particular partner marketing motion, whether it's co-marketing or affiliate marketing, it's also being integrated back into the other systems and the other teams and where they're working and where ultimately is being reported up to the founders or to the board. And that's one of the biggest hurdles, and I think it's an ongoing challenge, and you need an ops person who understands partners, which I think Robert kind of mentioned. There's a skill shortage for partner managers, but I think there's also a huge shortage for people who understand operations, but also understand partnerships.
Yeah, just to give you guys an idea, there are partner people out there making $1 million a year. And it used to be that only salespeople made $1 million a year, but there's partner people out there definitely making $1 million a year. And this is because their companies are investing heavily into different types of partners. I mean, if you think about it in an exec team, right? The exec team sits together and says, well, we want to go get enterprise customers and mid-market customers, and SMB customers. No company actually goes after all three customers at the same time. And the same thing is true for partners as well. If you sit down as an exec team and you talk about the different types of partners, you're like, hey, we want creators, we want influencers, we want affiliates, we want tech companies, we want ISVs. Like the list goes on and on and on. You can't possibly go after all of them at the same time because it just confuses everybody. And you can't actually get to the next bullet point, which is strategic core marketing. In my humble opinion, the word strategy just means finding hidden pockets of opportunity ethically. I'll put that out there. Because sometimes people move on the other side. But the way you do this is you actually like have a very in-depth conversation with your partner to say which opportunity are we going after, right? We gave you 2 examples on stage. Like we went with and worked with Pavilion because they have an audience of sales and marketing leaders. We worked with HubSpot because HubSpot really needed to invest in their application partners because traditionally they've been working with their solution partners, which are people that help you implement HubSpot. There are a number of examples out where I think BetterWorks went and worked with Prince Harry to like figure out how they raise the awareness of mental health because the guy was going through issues. We won't go into why the issues were. That's a very royal matter. And but the thing is like when you get to this level of strategic core marketing, it does require effort. And it requires like intentionality. And so you need to sit down and say, okay, if we are really going to go work with this celebrity, does the celebrity's values map to our brand? Is what they stand for well? And it's not that they can go do a commercial, but it actually comes down to like, well, the foundation that they're supporting, what does the foundation do and where is it making impact, right? And so those are some examples of this strategic co-marketing. It is the highest level of it. I know the word strategic co-marketing or maybe strategic, anything strategic gets thrown out a lot. And that's actually the destination. It's not actually the start.
Yeah, I think these type of campaigns can have a huge impact and they can be a lot more efficient. I think for years, Target did a really good job of like essentially partnering with these very high-end brands, which for them, not only were they some of those very successful from a revenue perspective, but also it kind of upscaled Target's brand, which is their goal to sort of distinguish themselves from Walmart is to have it be the higher class store. And I think that obviously on the designer side, it was an opportunity to grow and scale and reach an entire new audience. And those type of relationships are more strategic and go to the next level, but they can really be incredibly profitable and long-lasting if they're done right.
So let's talk about the last one, which I believe, at least in B2B land, is going to become very popular over the next 18 months, is enablement. And the thing is that you have to continuously enable people because we're getting hit by so many different things. And all the way through COVID, we've gone through so many start-stops in the economy, in our lives. The layoffs then like kind of compounded on top of that. But the ongoing enablement is an absolute must. Whether you're in B2C or B2B, it doesn't matter. And you need to give people assets, you need to give guides, you need to put instruction videos, do webinars, like whatever it is, you need to do that. Now, if you happen to find yourself in a world where you just have many partners, like let's say hundreds or thousands of stuff, right? You can actually deploy scaled partner management or scaled partner marketing support. And HubSpot does this really well because if you want to go talk to somebody at HubSpot, it's literally impossible because you have to go to support@hubspot.com. But then when you push an email to support@hubspot.com, magically the right person automatically comes to you. And then they follow you all the way through the support case, and then they follow you through videos, they follow you with case studies and stuff. And it's like, traditionally the world has actually taught us to like provide one-to-one support, but scaled partner management or scaled customer success or scaled sales, like that is the future. And it's super efficient. And the reason why it's efficient also is because there's so much talent out in the world. One of my best friends is actually the head of biz dev for Deal. And Deal is like growing at, I think like 80% year over year. They're already at 500 million in ARR. They have like 90% gross margin. Like, I mean, the company is like crazily growing. And the reason why they're popular is because they have made hiring very quality talent around the world very easy. You can have, I mean, our marketers, like PL's marketers are in Argentina. And you would think like, well, what do they know about partnerships? But they are very creative. Disney has an office in Argentina. They laid off a bunch of people. We hired them. And so I would encourage you all to like think about scaled processes and scaled departments and like leverage talent that's out there. And these are very, very, very cheap. Like to give you an example, right? The average sales resource or the average marketer, you'd probably have to pay them like 60, 70 grand a year around the US on average, right? But to support you, you could hire somebody at like 5 grand a year. And you give them all of the mundane admin tasks and help them figure out all the process stuff so that you spend most of your time on strategy or most of your time on creative and working on offers and messaging.
Yeah, I think a big part of this ongoing enablement is the partner experience, right? So I think a lot of companies don't put enough effort and automation into the partner experience, and especially sort of tying back to what we were saying about noise in a different way, right? Partners have a lot of options as to who they want to work with, and if you want to stay top of mind, you have to provide a top-class partner experience. And at HubSpot, we have over 1,400 tech partners and over 7,000 agency partners. And you are still able to reach a human. And one of the reasons that we're able to do that at that scale is because you provide a lot of enablement. You provide a partner portal that people actually is easy to use and easy to find what they're looking for. And that reduces the need to reach out to an actual human. But having that be available, right, that matters to partners because they suddenly feel a more personal connection than they do with other ecosystems that they are also in and are competing for their attention. And I think this is true whatever partner type you're working with. How do you give them a good experience? How do you make them loyal to you, even beyond the business deal that you're offering them, right? Because all partners are going to care about the revenue and what you're doing for them. But ultimately, if you can create that human connection and that sense of loyalty, they will stay with you and they will invest more in you, even beyond the financial benefit. It's just human nature. And that's really something I highly recommend people putting investment into because many companies don't do it at all.
Super. So we want to leave you with a couple of different reports. The State of Partner Operations goes into a lot of detail. Kelly actually wrote like 93 pages of it, which is amazing. But it actually shows you how partner people think about their own function. And then the State of Partner-Led Growth shows you how sales and marketing feels about partnerships. And so these two reports are designed to go hand in hand. And now we're at a point where like they're being used in boardrooms to really help educate people about what are the metrics, what does the industry look like. We were able to get management consulting firms like BCG involved. And BCG, if you all don't know, is the #2 management consulting firm in the world. They only work with C-suite and boards of very large companies. And so our goal and our hope is that we actually take this data and insight into large companies and then create this wave that then we all can go capture. Okay, right before we go into Q&A, a quick plug for those of you who really want to learn more about B2B partnerships and partnerships in general, how teams are being organized and how process is being scaled. We have a conference called Catalyst coming up in Denver on August 21st and 23rd. Last year, to give you a fun story, we planned for a 200-person event and 450 people showed up. The fire marshal was literally like, please don't let more people in, we're going to shut your event down. So again, we're not conference people, right? We're partner people. It's just trying to understand how to put a conference together. This year, we basically said we want to invite anybody and everybody around the world that's interested in learning more about partnerships. And you'll meet a lot of people that are working on different partner issues in different regions and different geographies. And so the goal is that we bring everybody together to exchange information, connect with each other, and really build bigger partnerships together. If you want more information about who Partnership Leaders is, this is our QR code. And we've spent about 4 years or so building this whole company out. And our hope is to actually serve about 200,000 people out there. And so it's going to be a 20-year journey, but we still have some time. With that said, let's open it up for Q&A. And any and all questions are fair.
Thank you very much. That was great. I'm not in partnerships. That's Ed. I'm in the back office, but I just had a question. That was very informative and very educational. I'm actually thinking about transferring departments now to go into partnerships.
Great.
But with that in mind,
let's give a round of applause because that's all we needed this conference to do.
with that in mind, and I don't mean this in a political way, what's your take on what happened with Bud Light? Because to me, that's a case study of a partnership situation gone unplanned or bad.
Yeah, do you want to tell people the story so that everybody's on the same page?
Oh, sorry. What was that? What did you ask? Sorry.
Tell what happened.
Oh,
yeah.
So Bud Light, it looks like they partnered up with a social influencer.
Yep.
But they kind of ignored their customer base, and they were aspiring to a different target customer.
Yep.
And things kind of unraveled on both ends.
Yeah, we should stop recording for this answer. Just kidding.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody before we answer, does anybody else want to just take a swing at the answer based on the content we just shared?
It's an interesting question.
This is turning into an office hour rather than keynote, huh?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about, going deeper, that brand alignment, and really finding out what that ideal partner profile is, right? If you don't have a good understanding of your brand and the partner's brand, which is a real risk and this doesn't sound like something that came out of a scaled operation, but maybe it did come out of someone on the team at Bud Light, right, who said, hey, this person is going to be great. This is someone who's popular, right? Because a classic marketing mistake, right, is saying this person has X followers, this person gets X engagement, right, and that's enough. And then they go from there. But actually, that can very easily blow up in your face because there's not an alignment with who you are trying to form a connection with, who you're trying to sell with, and who this person is selling to, and also what they stand for, right? And I think that sounds like a classic example of the strategic framework, the brand alignment was not put into place before the partnership was activated.
Okay, let's take the street answer for this one, right? Basically, every single major leader out there says, let's go empower our people to make decisions, right? And then people take that internally and say, oh my goodness, I'm like the CEO of my unit, and then I can make the decision myself, and I can literally go and do whatever I want, because as long as it hits corporate metrics, everything will be forgiven, right? And then there's a pressure of producing results. And the campaign gets generated, and they say, well, what's the ROI of this campaign? We have to hit this thing. If you don't hit this thing, your bonus is on pause, right? And so somewhere where I think is actually, as I studied that specific example, somewhere somebody said, you know what, let's go do this and let the other party make the decision for us, and whatever they do is going to be fine, right? And so somebody in that organization took the controls in their hands rather than following a rigorous process that says, hey, should we be doing this? What is the outcome of this? If we alienate some people, is it worth the risk? And what's the backup plan for that, right? Because that rigor wasn't in place, or maybe it was and it just wasn't followed, you end up with that. Now, the thing is, what happened afterwards? Like, just so that we all know the story, like did people stop buying Bud Light and move to Coors Light? Or was there any commentary on that?
I think Modelo now is the #1 beer in the United States, so
Okay.
they stopped buying Bud Light. And my understanding is they tried to do damage control with these kind of what was interpreted as cynical ads, trying to suck up to their original customer base, but that blew up as well. And now Modelo is the #1 selling beer in America.
Yeah, so because beer is such an emotional topic, you know, that's a different keynote. It's just, to me, it just comes down to like, okay, when you tell your people you're empowered, you have to tell them what they're empowered with. This can't just be like, you're empowered, go rock the world, and then everybody like starts to like take decisions in their hands, and it causes all these problems. And I'm not surprised. I think there's gonna be more of this if you follow down the same path that company followed. Go ahead, Kim.
And this sounds like a mistake, but I think that we should also acknowledge like partnerships can be risked, right? And I think, you know, Kanye West is a good example of who made a lot of brand partnerships that went really well for the companies until they didn't.
Yes.
And I think it was Adidas who was the last one to cut ties.
Yeah.
But you know, he had a kind of a volatile brand himself, but some might say he's brilliant, he's artistic, and then he kind of went too far down the path of volatile and a lot of negativity that brands didn't want to be associated with. But sometimes brands do take risks, sometimes they work out, and sometimes they don't. So in those cases, it might not necessarily have really been the wrong decision at the time. It just, they took a risk and they lost. And I think that that's okay for businesses, but in other cases, you didn't put the framework in place. You weren't taking a conscious risk.
Yeah.
You just were chasing the wrong variable.
Yeah, and sometimes, by the way, it may be okay taking the risk, as long as everybody understands that, yes, we are taking this risk, because the reality is, like, next week, some other politician is going to say something, and the people are just going to forget the whole thing, and there's the world will have moved on to something else. So, but the base is still correct. Like, You just need to make sure that there's some rigor around how these things launch, and that would be like I would say, that would be our recommendation there. All right, is there another question? Man, now that we're on that example, I have so many other examples in my mind, right? We could be here for hours.
Actually, there are many good examples. When Nike took a stand with Colin Kaepernick, right? It was deemed like a bad move,
Yeah.
and 5 years later,
Yeah.
the world recognized it was the right move,
Yep.
and actually they were able to dramatically, for the first time, had more sales online
Yep.
than in stores because they made the right bet. Benetton,
Yep.
20 years ago, made the bet, putting ads, displaying people with AIDS. Everyone criticized them and proved to be on the right history.
Yep.
It's a complex topic.
100%.
But a specific question for you. Something that we discussed, remember, we had a couple of conversations, struck me when I was hiring a couple of people for a partnership team. We had the opportunity to interview really good candidates, and in their previous jobs or current jobs, they were delivering amazing results, but nevertheless, they got fired, right? So there is this thing where on one side, partnerships has proven to be an amazing way to do capital efficient customer acquisition. No one argues on the value, but at the same time, for many SaaS companies, are the first one to let go before everyone else. So why is the reason in so many business companies, the people making those decisions, CEOs, founders, fail to really grasp the value? What's your take on that?
Yeah. I really wish we had done this like as a three people again, because I would love to have Kathleen on the stage with us on this one, because we've literally been talking about this stuff. But go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I think the key component really is that partnerships is looked at a second or third tier strategy. That's just the default when you hang out in marketing communities and sales communities. Direct is number one, and partnerships is something to maybe experiment with and try with. A number of the contributors to this report, which are executives at leading companies, referred to it as the redheaded stepchild, which I think that the reality is, and these are leading investors, leading consultants, that's how they assess it across the entire market, and I think that's true. So I think when economic times get tough and challenging and the CEO and the board is looking at the go-to-market organization and they're saying, I'm just not bought in on an intuitive level, so unless you can show me that you're driving X percentage of revenue, I'm just gonna cut you out. I think another reason is there's a talent shortage, so a lot of times people hire a partner manager who has no experience, which this was mentioned yesterday as well, and unsurprisingly, the results stink because they don't know what they're doing, and that would be the same if you hired a marketer to be your CMO and they have no experience. So that's another common mistake. I will say I think Doug Landis from Emergence Capital in this book said that what he observes is that sales teams become more open to partners in economic times that are challenging because they're willing to give up control because they're desperate to hit their quota, and so they will try anything. So I think maybe in some organizations that will play out right now, but I absolutely agree with you. I've seen as well where mid-market companies are like, let's just slash the partner team. And the best thing you can do in response to that is try to use market data like this, make out a business case, show any results that you have, extrapolate it out. If you invested more, you would get X more revenue, and hope for the best. But I think sometimes it's not even a rational argument for founders or boards. They just don't see it.
So I think this is a leadership problem, primarily, right? And it's actually counterintuitive. It's actually not a sales and marketing leadership problem. It's actually a partner leadership problem. And the reason why I say that is because when a CEO sits in front of his executive team and says, let's go do partnerships, right? He or she is expecting that somebody would raise their hand and say, I'm going to take it. The partner leader sits over there and says, oh, who wants to go out for drinks? Literally, right? And that's kind of the problem, right? And what we need to do is actually we need to bring the partner leaders up and create like operators out of them. Because the sales leaders operate on revenue, repeatability, rigor, respect, resilience, all these things. But the partner leader goes in and says, well, okay, I'll go see what the sales leader is doing. I'll go see what the marketing leader is doing. Maybe we can partner together, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They don't show up as operators. But the job that they're in requires them to be an operator. I was on the phone with Andrew Lindsay yesterday, right? Andrew Lindsay is running a 250-person partnerships team at Microsoft. It is undoubtedly the largest team of any company out there that I know. And so there are examples. Now, if you go and look at Andrew's profile, Andrew's sitting on the board of Asana. He was running partnerships at HubSpot, right? Like, there are people like that. Now, the problem is, why aren't there more people like that? It's because not enough people aspire to be like that. And to answer Ed's question, right, I'm sure there's like partner people getting riffed all over the place, right? I'll tell you why. In Q4 of last year, and this is just a history lesson, and this is primarily my views only. In Q4 of last year, the whole partner world, to elevate partnerships, started to come up with like new terminology and new vernacular, and they started making noise inside of their companies. And so the C-suites basically said, okay, we'll listen to you, but then tell me how can I actually operationalize this? The answer was, well, you can do influence, you can do this, you can do that, anything but revenue. And all of those people found themselves out of a job, or I'm sure most of them did. And the reason why I say that is because we track how many of our members, or how many of our 1,500 members actually go and are looking for jobs, and I think like 7% of them are. In the market, I believe 33% of partner people are actually looking for a job right now, and it's all those people that focused on influence and like all these things, versus just saying, I'm gonna show up, I'm actually gonna be a partner to a sales leader, and I understand the sales process as well as he or she does, and we're going to drive change through the whole org, and here's all the other pockets of opportunity that are available that we're going to go get. You, sales leader, use a direct team to go over here. Me, I'll take my resources, go over here. Together, all we're trying to do is hit board plan. Because if we hit board plan, everybody gets promoted, we all make more money, and our wives are happy. So hopefully that helps, but I'm happy to help. I know we have 1 minute left, but that's another keynote in itself, by the way. All right, well, we're going to be here all day. Hopefully this data and rich insight gave you something to take inside of your companies and have a conversation. That was our goal for that. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning.